All right, guys, I really, really, really need your help because some of the speakers that we have here, they've never been in Italy. It was hard to convince them to come in Italy because, you know, if you say, come to the TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco or New York, everyone wants to go. But imagine if you say, come to TechCrunch Disrupt in Italy, well, it's not so easy, you know, in the beginning. You have really to trust, and it is a lot of work going on. So I really would love you just to warm up the best speakers we have, and especially international speakers, of course, also the Italian, and we start immediately. The first one is unbelievable. Cloudflare is the company. They process, I think, 1.5 billion visitors per month. I don't know, amazing number. This guy is really amazing. I saw his presentation in London some time ago. I was totally blown up. Please, a big, big warm-up welcome to Matthew Prince, the founder and CEO of Cloudflare.
I do want to correct one misstatement, which was it was not very hard to get me to come to Rome. This actually, one of the fun things about starting Cloudflare has been that I've got to travel around and see a lot of different things. But this is actually my first time in Rome, so thank you very much for the very warm welcome. It's been a terrific city. So what I want to talk to you about today a little bit is sort of the irrational act of becoming an entrepreneur. And there are a lot of startups that are launching here today. And if you are one of the startups who's launching here today, congratulations. This is the great stage to launch from. And I'm going to tell you the story a little bit about what we've done at Cloudflare, because we actually launched on stage at TechCrunch Disrupt, although in San Francisco, not Italy, some time ago. And so a bit about Cloudflare first, and then I'll talk about sort of the story of being an entrepreneur. So our mission is we're building a better web. And that's a pretty crazy thing. I actually had to practice for months in front of the mirror saying that and not cracking up or laughing at myself, because it's almost insane to think that what our ambition is to really rebuild a fundamental part of the internet. And that's literally what we've done. So we've built a network. We currently have 23 data centers around the world. We're working on opening a data center in Milan. We do over a trillion web requests per month through our network. That's about 500,000 web requests in the last second passing through our network. This has been our growth since we originally launched. We do about 5 billion page views per employee. To give you some sense of scale, there's never been another company in history that has done even 1 billion page views per employee. And sort of the grandmother-friendly metric of how Cloudflare works, and we'll come back to my grandmother later in this story because she figures into it, is that if this is the world before Cloudflare, where visitors are going directly to your website wherever it's located, the world after Cloudflare puts us in between, and so traffic passes through our network so we can clean and accelerate that traffic, make it significantly faster, and make sure it performs really well. Or for those of you who are really studying the space in the audience, the much more techie view is that the world is moving from a world of software and applications and capital expenditures to a world of cloud and services and operational expenditures, and that there are different tiers of web infrastructure. There's a store and compute tier, an application tier, and an edge tier. Companies like HP and EMC used to own store and compute. Amazon is taking that over today. Applications used to be Microsoft and Oracle. In the future, that's becoming companies like Salesforce and Google. And then at the edge, which is where we play, there are a whole slew of companies, and we're trying to rebuild that. Again, not what you need to know. At the core, what you need to know is that a whole bunch of traffic, in fact, about 4% of all the web requests online, pass through our network every single day, and we make them faster, and we protect them from different attacks which are online. These are some of our big customers. We have a number of national governments. I'm really proud that the Italian government uses us for a number of sites. I pulled just in the last 24 hours some of the most popular Italian websites which are on our network. And again, it's pretty amazing, even though we don't have presence in Italy, that we have technology companies, startups, travel blogs, news sites. I don't know, this is a pop culture, Italian pop culture. I learned all about what's going on in pop culture. There's a bunch of fashion sites which are on that. You can tell I'm not a regular reader of any of those. And again, what our mission has been is very simply to build a better web, fundamentally. And that sounds really, really big. In fact, it sounds almost unfathomably big. And yet, like everything, it started extremely small. It started with nothing more than an idea on a piece of paper. In fact, here was that piece of paper. This was our original business plan that we put together back in September of 2009. And I pulled this up when I was putting this presentation together, and what was fun to read were the notes that were at the bottom of the presentation. So I said, introduce myself and the team, because we were presenting this to a venture capitalist, and when I would practice, I used to forget to do that, just to even introduce ourselves. I said, thank Daphina. Daphina was the associate that was working at the venture capital firm who had brought us in. I said, go fast, right? Get lots of energy, pump yourself up, really get excited. Don't read every bullet point on the slide, which is a lesson I still have not learned to stop doing, as you can see from this. And then I gave myself a little script of how to present this. And so if you, again, are one of the startups in the room that has a slide that looks something like this, you're not alone. This is how everything starts. And even things that grow very, very large start very, very small in the beginning. And to be honest, I was totally terrified, right? I was scared as I stood up there trying to pitch, trying to get people to use our service, trying to get people to invest in our service. I was terrified that it was going to fail. I was literally down to not knowing exactly how I was going to pay my rent the next month, living at the edge of what was there, but believe that we had something that we could build that was very big. And again, this is part of the irrational act of being an entrepreneur. I was even terrified after some of the milestones hit. So we raised money. We raised about $2 million back in 2009. And this was taken the day that the funds actually hit our bank account. We had no idea what to do. Suddenly we had $2 million in the bank. And this is my co-founder, Michelle and Lee. And we weren't sure what to do, so we drove about 2 hours down the California coast to a little town called Carmel, California, and bought lunch and said, oh shit, now we have to build something. And we built for a year. And then we launched, and this was actually us on stage. That's me standing there on the left. What you can't see is that backstage, just shortly before this picture was taken, I actually had ripped the seam in my jeans, and so that was what I was mostly worried about. Michelle is standing next to me, and judging us on stage were my tech heroes, right? That's Kevin Rose, that's Marissa Mayer, who's now the CEO of Yahoo. You can't see Ron Conway, Roloff from Sequoia. Again, these were the people that we looked up to, that we admired, and again, they were judging us. And you might think that that was our toughest audience, but it wasn't. This probably, if I can get the slide to advance, is who I would have thought of as our toughest audience. So that's my grandmother. She's 98 years old in this picture. That's my father, and that's my sister. And they're a little looking at me like I'm crazy, right? Because I just shown them this. I said, oh, we're going to build this service. We're going to make the web faster, and it's going to work really, really well. And if you look back at that picture, like, again, compare the looks on the faces of the judges there. They're leaning forward. They get it. They're excited about what we're building. To on the right, my family, who's saying, you're doing what? Because again, I had lots of other options. I could have gone and worked for banks, for consulting companies. I could have done a lot of things. I graduated from a good business school. There were lots of very viable paths, and yet I was saying, I'm going to do this crazy thing. I'm going to go out and I'm going to start and be an entrepreneur. And again, that's the look that you get on your face. And if you're seeing that when you're starting companies, if you're seeing that when you're trying to pitch this back to your parents, think of all of the things in your life that you have not done because your family or your community or the people in your life thought, well, that's crazy. In fact, they all say, huh, right? They don't know what's going on. That reaction almost stopped me, right? And it stops most people from moving forward, right? And starting a company is a totally irrational experience. It's something that it just doesn't make sense to most of the other people in your life, and it's very, very hard to justify it. Again, our promise was we were somehow, as 3 people with a piece of paper, going to rebuild the internet. That's insane, right? And everyone in my life said, that's completely insane. And yet 4 years later, 4% of the web flows through our network. And so every once in a while, insane things take off. But there is a lot of momentum that holds you back. And as I've been, thinking about who are entrepreneurs and what makes them work, I've dug into a lot of the research about what the characteristics of entrepreneurship are. And there is a lot of research on this. So if you look at entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, on average, they live 2,459 miles away from their family. They're almost, again, overrepresented as only children, overrepresented left-handed, overrepresentation of learning disabilities, especially dyslexia. It's a lot of immigrants. You'll see again, over and over again, that immigrants are more and more likely to be entrepreneurs. A lot of atheists, not a lot of churchgoers in there. A lot come from broken families, divorced parents, and they, in my experience, have a terrible fashion sense. But again, the research is still out on this. What ultimately I think this is, again, this doesn't mean that if you're right-handed, I'm right-handed, that you can't be successful. It doesn't mean that you have to come from, you have to be an only child. Again, I have a sister, as you've seen, and who's actually a fashion designer. She got all the fashion sense. And so it doesn't mean that you have to have those things, but if you think about what those things are at core, what they mean is that these people are outsiders, right? They're people without communities that are holding them back, telling them that they cannot do the impossible thing that they are dreaming of. They're people who don't necessarily go to church on Sunday and say, yeah, I'm thinking of rebuilding the internet, and have everyone explain to them why that's not possible, right? They're people who oftentimes don't have a community of themselves, and so they have to create it for themselves. And as I look around at the other entrepreneurs in my circle, again, I see that same pattern repeating over and over again. We're not always the nicest, most cuddly, most socially adept people to work with and work around, but a lot of times we're creating a reality which is different. We're striving to do something. We're undercutting the systems and sort of traditions that there are as part of society. And in part of that, we're doing crazy things, again, literally including rebuilding the internet. And so as I walked around Rome the other day, I thought, what is the difference between Silicon Valley and Rome? And, how could you really encourage entrepreneurship? What's the story that would help? What is the missing ingredient here that really spurs that on? And as we just heard in the last talk, I think the government is doing a lot to encourage entrepreneurship, and events like this are terrific. And I really thank TechCrunch and Populous and the Maxi Museum for hosting us. But fundamentally, there's a real challenge here. And if you compare Silicon Valley versus Rome, what's the difference? At some level, this is Rome, right? It's traditions, right? It's structure. It's a place that you literally are digging up the past and honoring it all the time. Compare that with what we celebrate in Silicon Valley, which is a little different, right? Remember this Apple campaign, here's to the crazy ones? Does anyone think that Steve Jobs was a warm, cuddly guy to hang around with? Right? He's really an outsider, someone who's different. And what this is embracing is something that's saying, just forget about what anyone else thinks. Go your own way, do your own thing, and make from that what you will. And that's sometimes really hard when you're tied very closely to family, when you're tied very close to tradition, and when you're tied very close to those things which are hard to give up. That doesn't mean, again, you have to do it. But it means that if you are one of the entrepreneurs sitting in the audience and you're thinking about going out and taking a risk, and you get the look on your family's face where they say, huh, right? Couldn't you just go be a banker? Don't let that discourage you, right? Find the other people in this audience that, again, might not be the most socially adept, and talk to them. Build a community that says, we're going to build together the things which people say are impossible. Right? Starting a company is not a rational exercise. But again, and chances are
chances are we'll fail, right? Chances are most of the companies launching here will fail. But there's so much you can learn. There's so much you can do. There's so much you can experience. And every once in a while, this is where great ideas come from. They come from the people who say, I'm going to defy the traditions. I'm going to defy what the experiences are. And I'm going to create something which is for myself. And so again, you know, you can, it requires ignoring tradition. It means that you're going to sometimes be very lonely. It means that sometimes your family is going to look at you like this. Again, look at them. Like, they think I'm crazy. This is, you know, look at the eyes of these people, right? We think we can rebuild the internet. And that's what you have to do. You have to find that. So, good luck to all the entrepreneurs launching today. Thank you so much for being such a warm audience for me here in Rome. And you have a beautiful city, so thank you.
Stay with me 1 second. 1 second, 1 second. Can I say Matthew is incredible? Seriously, also the things that you achieved is super. I have one question. Is it true that you coded your first program at 7 years old, or is just part of the legend?
No, so my grandmother, when I was 7, gave me an Apple II Plus in 1980, and my mom used to sneak me into university computer science classes she would pretend to take, and I was the one who would actually take them. But you know, and that was great, and I'm a decent programmer. But you know, there's skills that are beyond just being technical, which are important. And so, you know, if I look at all the wonderful things that I've had an opportunity to do, you know, I wouldn't trade any part of my education, which included studying literature and law and business and a whole range of things. You have to wear many hats when you're an entrepreneur. And so, so I was coding when I was 7.
Matthew, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Prince Cloudflare.
Thank you.
Thanks.